Good morning, everyone. It is 11:30, but we are still waiting on a couple members to join, although it looks like with the people that just jumped on, we should have a quorum. So Doug, if it's all right with you, I'll walk through the kind of the rules and procedures, and then you can call the meeting to order and I'll do a roll call. So with that being said, this is the June 15th meeting of the Ohio City Design Review Committee. Go over the virtual meeting regulations and procedures. The meeting shall be conducted according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Recusals due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the start of any presentation. Committee members will then leave the meeting for the duration of the case discussion. No presentation submissions will be accepted after the deadline. The chair will call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call of the committee. The administrator will introduce the first project and provide some background information if applicable. The meeting will then be turned over to the applicant to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the committee. Once the presentation is concluded, the administrator will read any received comments. The committee will then begin deliberations and project review. Please use the raise hand feature. After deliberations and review concludes, the committee will render its recommendation and vote. After the vote, the applicant may leave the meeting and the administrator will introduce the next project. All projects will follow the same format until all projects are heard by the committee. Once all projects are heard, the chair will call for any committee/administrative reports. After all reports have been heard, the chair will adjourn the meeting. As far as community comments are concerned, any and all community members may provide their written comments, thoughts, or questions regarding the projects presented to the committee for review and approval. Community members may also telephone their comments or questions to the committee administrator. All comments, thoughts, or questions must be submitted to the committee administrator no later than 48 hours before the start of the meeting. Submissions can be made through our email address by calling our phone line here at Landmarks or emailing or dropping off comments to our office at City Hall. Public comments or submissions made after the deadline will not be heard by the committee. Public comment will be collected by Landmark staff and sent to the committee members for review prior to the scheduled meeting. Staff will then summarize the received comments during the meeting. The applicant of the project is under no obligation to answer any community questions. Community members are invited to attend the design review meetings, but there will be no public comment period. As a reminder, the design review guidelines, all projects follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. All projects are being considered for the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness. All projects are considered on a case-by-case basis, and the Ohio City Design Review Committee is advisory to the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. Recommendations by this committee are not final actions. Depending on the scope of the project, submissions may be approved administratively or will need to be reviewed by the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. Projects will be scheduled at the next available commission meeting after an action is taken. So, Mr. Chairman, with all that being said, if you want to call the meeting to order, I can do roll call.
Yes, let's call this meeting of the Ohio City Design Review Committee on 2023 to order. And Dan, would you please call the roll?
Sure thing. Mr. Frondorf? Ms. Land? Mr. Lozier? Here. Ms. Marinucci? Mr. Sambury? Mr. Sambury, did you?
Muted. Sorry.
Okay, sorry, there's some weird mic stuff going on. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
And Mr. Wall.
Perfect.
All right, Mr. Chair, we have a quorum. So if we want to start with our first case, this is case OC 23-17, 1616 West 25th Street. This was, I guess these are revisions to a previously approved plan that was approved on 4/6/23. It's a design for the patio at Kanzaman. The previous approval was more of a pergola form, and the applicant, I'm not sure unless he's the call in. Wally, are you? I don't see him here. Although Maria is here. Maria, you're the building owner, correct?
That's correct.
Are you able to make
Hi.
the presentation, or do you need to wait for?
Yeah, I need to wait for him.
Okay.
I'm texting him now. Thank you.
Okay, if it's, I guess I'd recommend to the chair that we move on to the next agenda item, if there is someone here to present for that.
Yeah, but
Do we have someone here to present for the Franklin Circle Church parking lot?
Yeah, that would be me, Brian Morach.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So I'll call case OC 23-02, 1688 Fulton Road. This was tabled by the committee in January of 2023. They're looking for an expansion of the Franklin Circle Church parking lot. So we've got Brian here to do his presentation. Brian, if you want to just let me know when you want me to click through the slides, and then before the committee gets into, yes?
We need to make a motion on table.
Oh, yes, yeah, we do need to make a motion to untable before we get into it. I was just gonna say, I do have some zoning information to share before you get into deliberations, but we'll do the untabling and then let the presentation go forward before I get into that. So,
all right, do we have a motion to untable?
Moved on table.
We have a second?
Second.
Call the roll, Dan, please.
all right, Mr. Frondorf,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sandberg.
Yeah.
Mr. Taylor
Yes.
and Mr. Wall.
Yes.
All right, the motion on table has passed. So, Brian, if you want to proceed with your presentation, just let me know when you want me to switch the slides.
Sure. So as I mentioned, my name is Brian Morach. I'm here on behalf of Franklin Circle Christian Church. And we're here to discuss adding additional parking to the back lot at Franklin Circle Christian Church. If you can move to the next slide, please. So where this paving would take place and the expansion of the lot is in that strip of green grass off of Circle Court. Yes, thank you. So basically, the plan is to extend the parking lot the length of that grass strip and add 11 parking spaces that mirror the ones on the other side of the grass patch. Majority of cars would be coming in off of Circle Court and then making a right turn into the parking spaces. In addition, cars would be able to come in off of Franklin Boulevard, ride down Circle Court, and take a left into the new parking spaces. If you go to the next slide, please. So this kind of gives a better idea of what we are planning here. So as I mentioned, there'll be 11 new parking spaces off of Circle Court. In addition to these parking spaces, we would maintain two landscaping islands, one on the west side of the new parking and one on the east side. The paving would take place over the back two parcels of the 3 total parcels that are all owned by Franklin Circle Christian Church of Cleveland. As you can see, parcel 33210 and 332.9 would be where the paving would take place. And again, those parcels are owned in their entirety by Franklin Circle Christian Church. If you could please move on to the next slide. So this is our landscaping plan. The landscaping plan, as I mentioned, there would be 2 landscaping islands maintained, one on the west and one on the east. The landscaped area would consist of a bed of river rocks pictured below, and then approximately 16 Green Mountain boxwood shrubs, both shown below, with those split evenly on each of the landscape islands for 8 on either island. The tree that is shown on the easternmost end of the parking right now, or as you see it, no longer exists. So that tree is no longer there. The magnolia tree on the westernmost landscaping island would be removed, and we would transport the existing arborvitae that lives on that westernmost landscaping island. In addition, we would make sure to maintain the curve on the southwesternmost corner of the paving to allow for efficient ingress and egress in and out of the existing parking lot. If you can move on to the next slide, please. In doing this, in paving this grass strip, we would be addressing a neighborhood issue. As mentioned before, the grass strip to be paved is owned and maintained by Franklin Circle Christian Church. So it is not a tree lawn. It is just an extension of their property off of the parking lot as it currently stands. The paved strip would help to create additional parking, which would help to alleviate a neighborhood issue that I feel and we feel is an issue all throughout Ohio City, having effective and efficient on-street and off-street parking. The grass strip that's subject to this discussion is already used as overflow parking from surrounding businesses. And election days, if there's a lot of events going on at the Cleveland Rocks next door, or anything that could possibly be going on in Ohio City, when parking takes place on that grass strip, and if it rains, if it's muddy, it can really tear up that grass strip. And for one, it's a bit of a muddy mess, but two, it doesn't look great. And it looks pretty unkempt if it gets torn up by cars that are parking on the grass. And as you can see, when I snapped this photo, it just so happened that there was a truck parked on that grass strip. I believe they were, performing services for a house nearby, but so it is being used sometimes as an inefficient parking space, as opposed to what could be an efficient parking space in the event it is paved. If you could please move on to the next slide. So there's been discussion of, I believe, I wasn't here for the meeting at the beginning of January. Someone else was here on our behalf, but it had been mentioned the possibility of introducing permeable pavers. So Franklin Circle Church is going to be using asphalt as the paving material, as the installation of permeable pavers will greatly increase the cost of the project beyond the means of the church. This project, by creating more parking spaces for the church, will in turn increase parking revenue for the church, as the church will be able to use it on its own, these parking spaces, or rent out the parking spaces to local businesses, extend parking that's been made available to Lutheran Hospital and other surrounding businesses. And as it states right there, it says we are currently awaiting a formal estimate or price comparison. So that was as of last Thursday when this presentation was submitted. Since then, we've received a quote for comparing that from asphalt, or for the excavation and pouring of asphalt, and then excavation and installation of permeable pavers. And we can confirm that the quote that was given increases the cost by at least 4 times the amount of what it costs to lay asphalt. And with that, it takes the cost of the project beyond the means of the church, and it's not realistic to believe that the church would be able to afford the installation of permeable pavers. Beyond that, I know there was a question on the January 5th presentation regarding variances that may be needed. We don't believe that there would be any variance needed, as we believe that the 2 parcels that were to be paved are both already zoned as local retail, which to our understanding means that parking is allowed on in a parcel that is zoned as local retail. Beyond that, if you can move to the next slide, please. Yes. So thank you for hearing our presentation, and that's all I have for you this afternoon.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, do you want me to go through the, I guess, the feedback from our zoning officials before you guys get into deliberations, as it sort of addresses some of those variance questions? So yeah, we sent this over to our our zoning folks, and I'll just read their response. It's kind of lengthy technical, so yeah. So 1688 Fulton Road is zoned local retail business D2 with a required map setback of 5 feet along Fulton and Church or Circle Court. The proposal to expand, it's a non-conforming parking lot. So section 352-08 and 352-09 require a medium intensity landscaping frontage strip of 6 feet along Fulton. The applicant is proposing parking within the front yard setback and location of frontage strip. If they add a frontage strip, it will not need a variance to partially park in the front yard setback. That's again on Fulton. If the lot is going to be used for hire parking, so pay to park, they'll need to comply with landscaping requirements of chapter 457. Section 349-08 states that where 5 or more off-street parking spaces are provided and they are located on a lot that is adjacent to a residential district, or that adjoining a building containing dwelling units, such parking spaces shall be screened from all adjoining lots in a residential district by an opaque wall, a uniformly painted fence or fire-resistant material, or a strip of land at least 4 feet wide with densely planted shrubs that will form a dense screen year-round. Such wall, fence, or shrubs shall be at least 3 feet, but no more than 6 feet in height. Section 349.09 states that where lighting is provided for accessory off-street parking spaces, it shall be constructed and arranged so as to prevent the direct emission of light upon adjoining lots or the public streets. There's no lighting shown. Section 349-07A states that accessory off-street parking spaces, driveways, and maneuvering areas shall be properly graded for drainage so that all water is drained within the lot, providing such parking spaces. Surfaced with concrete, asphaltic concrete, asphalt, or other surfacing materials approved by the Director of Building and Housing, maintained in good condition and free of debris and trash. There's no drainage shown on the proposed plans. Section 349.07B states that such spaces shall be provided with wheel and bumper guards that are located, and that no part of the parked vehicle will extend beyond such parking spaces. There's no park stop shown. Finally, section 349.15C states that bicycle parking spaces shall be provided at a rate of 1 bicycle parking space per 20 automobile parking spaces provided. So I think there'd be a bicycle parking space would need to be added. So so that's the feedback from our zoning folks.
And Dan, if you don't mind, are you able to, when this meeting is done, is someone able to send me that so I can have
Absolutely.
it, give it a look? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We just we just got it this morning, but yeah, I can certainly get it to you.
That'd be much appreciated. And two things just to touch on, if you don't mind. So nothing will be done off of Fulton Road. So there's not going to be anything that changes when it comes to the sidewalk or anything that's set off from Fulton Road. This would all be coming off of Circle Court. And also, it might not be shown on the drawing, but as far as a drain is concerned, there is an already existing drain in the bottom right hand. So it'd be, yes, right in that general area. It's covered by the now gone tree, but there is an existing drain that exists right there. Yep, right beyond that utility box. So.
All right, well, thank you for that. I guess, you know, you clearly have some variant issues to deal with here, and let's start with sort of the easy one, the drainage, is that even though it's not a big slope, I believe, and it appears to be confirmed by the photograph, that the grass strip, current grass strip, is slopes down to Circle Court and not pointed towards the drain. It looks like the rest of the parking lot is sort of pointed in that general direction with the grading and so forth, but it looks like when you pave that grass strip, you know, the water that accumulates in that area is going to run into the public right of way into Circle Court. And I don't see any catch basins along there. Maybe there is one near that electric transformer near Fulton Road, but anyway, you know, as stated in the zoning review, you're required to deal with, you know, storm runoff on your own property, and so there is an issue that that segues into the next comment, is that once you eliminate that grass strip and you pave it over, it's going to be like a sea of paving there. The right of way, a Circle Court, is going to just blend in with your parking lot and be a sea of asphalt. So I think that's kind of problematic for me, and one of the reasons I think we suggested that you seriously look into the permeable paving, because then there's a visual barrier there also, and without parking stops, you know, since you plan on double loading those front to back for people to drive back out onto Circle Court, there's no means to keep people from you know, pulling up too far and parking in the right of way and obstructing that area. I didn't see any proposal on your site plan to stripe it any differently or any such thing like that to help, you know, define the parking area from the street area. And then lastly, have the people across Circle Court that live there, have they been consulted on this or expressed any opinions about how they feel about this change?
Not to my knowledge, no.
I agree with everything Doug just said, but my comments are more even succinctly summarized by the zoning. And it's my recommendation that you go back and address some of those issues, especially pertaining to drainage, as Doug mentioned, screening, especially as it abuts the residential there. And unless there are any further comments, I'd like to move to table this so the applicant has time to go and address those issues, if the applicant is amenable to that.
I would like to throw out as well, and I'm not sure if you guys have discussed this or even looked into, because I'm not sure what the qualifications are, but like permeable paving grants through the city or the sewer district's green infrastructure program. I don't know if that's something that is an avenue that you can go down to help subsidize possibly the cost of adding permeable pavers or making it more affordable. Just throwing it out there as a possible resource that might help make this a little easier.
All right, thanks, Philip.
Alex, did you put a motion on the table?
I did. If the applicant is agreeable to tabling, I move to table. Are you agreeable to tabling?
Yes, that is fine, and I would just, as I mentioned before, would appreciate those variance language to be sent our way. But yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, do we have
I'll second.
the tabling motion?
I heard a second from Chris. Is that right?
Yep.
All right, please call the roll, Dan.
All right, Mr. Frendorf,
Aye.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yeah.
Mr. Talley,
Yes.
and Mr. Wall.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes. When the meeting is over, I will send this, forward the zoning email to you, Brian, and, yeah, then we can talk next steps after that.
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your time,
Um,
everyone.
It's like looks like our first agenda item, the applicant is now here. So Wally, we'll go back to your presentation. And just as a reminder, this was previously approved on 4/6/23. It's the patio for Kanzaman. What was originally approved is the same footprint, same posts and same location, everything like that. It's just going from a pergola type form to more of a covered roof structure. So you got some images here, and Wally can talk us through it. So just let me know when you want me to change through slides, or if you want to talk, I can just click through them.
Hi, how are you? You hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm gonna use for the roof the 2x10 rafter and plywood, and after that I will put the roll roofing, and it's gonna be gutter in the side for the water. I cannot hear nobody. You hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you. Just so the gutter is going to be on this side where the cursor is now.
Yes. And it's gonna be 2x10 plywood. And top of the plywood, it's gonna be a roll of for the rolling for the for the water.
It's just some clarification. Is there going to be a gable to this? Does it come to a point in the middle, or does it all slope to one side? I think there's
Slope
kind
to
of
one
two.
side
Okay.
to the where is the gutter, for the water.
Okay.
Inside it's gonna be drywall in the top of this
So this will be,
drywall close.
The town having
Hi, Dan.
drywall outside on the ceiling.
Wally, is that what you're saying? Drywall here on this exterior ceiling?
Yeah, inside, yeah. Drywall, or I can keep it open if they like it to keep it open. I'll keep it open. But for the winter time, I try to make it more warm.
Hi, Dan, and Wally. So the challenge that I have with this presentation is that it doesn't really match what you're describing, and it's hard for us to provide feedback if we don't have accurate drawings and labeling of materials and whatnot. So I don't know that I'm prepared to make a motion on this until we have the correct and accurate information in front of us that we can review prior to our discussion.
I have to second that completely, that these drawings no longer reflect what you're planning on doing. Your little rendering shows like stone-clad piers coming up out of the ground, but your technical drawings don't reference that at all. Your section through the roof profile shows it pitched two directions. Now you're saying that's not what you're going to do. You're saying you're going to put a drywall ceiling in, but you can't expose drywall to the elements. So you propose these roll-up curtains or something for cold weather, which I also don't see shown here in any way, or heaters or anything like that. So what appears in these drawings to be a patio with a roof covering over it looks like you want to do something else with it, and And you've got drawings that show different things again, like the columns, you know, are they just 6x6 posts exposed? Or these look like larger items that are clad with something, and some detailed trim at the tops and bottoms of them. And what is the fascia exterior material that you see over? You have beams running along the perimeter, but you, as far as I can tell, they don't show what the cladding is on that for finished appearance. Yes, you've got beams shown on that top section on either side, but it just looks like rough lumber. I don't see any finished trim designated, called out, or anything of the sort. So, you know, we just don't have enough information here that follows what you say you're going to do to make a judgment about it. Does that make sense to you? I'm not trying to be, you know, argumentative or.
No, I understand. You know, I need a simple patio and it's covered so no leak in the roof. That's what I'm looking for. You know, I'm not looking for a special thing or something special to use. Just in the summertime, it's gonna be covered from the raining, and winter time, it's, you know, same thing. I don't need snow or water coming down. That's why I want to do it this way. It's more strong for me, because really the old one I spend more than 20,000 and it's all the time leaking. Just I want to fix the problem. And if I need,
We're fine with your proposed use. I mean, there's no issue there. The issue is that the drawings don't reflect accurately what we perceive the plan to be. And we would suggest that you work with landmark staff on all the details that are needed, and your architect, if you have one, to provide more detailed and accurate drawings and renderings.
it's okay with me. You know, what they want me to do, I will do it. What kind of roof they want me to do, I will do it. You know, I need something strong for me to let the people sit down and, you know, no problem. They want plywood, they want anything, I will do it. You know, I don't have problem with that.
So I'll move. It sounds like you're agreeable to tabling. I will move to table so that you have time to prepare accurate and detailed renderings.
I second.
Can I sit down with Don, I think, and explain for me what exactly they want me to do? I will do it. What kind of material they want me to put, I will put. I don't have any issue with that.
Well, it's not telling you what kind of materials to use. It's, you know, just showing some, because these drawings do not show the same thing. You know, for example, your section shows 45-degree angle braces off of these columns. The rendering doesn't show that. And so it's you've got conflicting information there. The section shows a roof pitched in two directions, and now you say that's not what you're doing. So what we're asking you to do is show more detail on the drawings and renderings of exactly what materials are going to be used and where, so it all shows the same thing. And working with landmark staff and your architect should be able to do that, because that's just typically what we expect appellants to provide.
Yeah, so Wally, if this is tabled, then maybe we could schedule a meeting after this for next week with landmark staff and your architect, kind of go through everything and
Okay.
help you get together a submission.
Okay, no problem.
With that, is there any other discussion, or are we ready to?
I think, do we have a second for the motion to table?
We did. Mr. Lozier seconded.
All right, well then, please call the roll, Dan.
All righty. Mr. Frondorf,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Talley,
Yes.
and Mr. Wall.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion to table passes. So Wally, we'll follow up, and yeah, we can talk this afternoon.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Just got a shuffle of papers here. We have case 23-035, which is also OC 23-14 for 45 West. It's at Lorraine and West 45th Street and 44th Street. It's partial demolition and new construction. Looks like we have Chad from My Place and Tim and Yev. So if you guys want to go ahead through your presentation, just let me know when you want me to change slides.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Today, we're excited to be presenting the final version of this transformational development. The added housing will bring a vibrancy to the area that is currently lacking. Over this process, we've met with many neighbors and businesses and owners who many of them are in support and excited to see the growth. We've also worked closely with the planning department to achieve the mayor's goal of creating a 15-minute city along transit lines and creating more affordable housing options. The City Council's vision also supports these type of developments to encourage public transportation. Having direct access to a 24-hour bus line immediately outside your front door does exactly that and eliminates needs for a car. This board has already approved similar developments of this size and larger on our main transit corridors, like the Corridor Phase 1 and 2, Church and State, Edge 32, Mariners Watch, the 41, 41 West, and more. These developments have all added tremendous value to the communities and increased the walkability, which the planning department and city council and the mayor's office is all in support of and very passionate about. The city is currently working on a transit-oriented development strategy that would reduce parking requirements for developments like this by including some of the amenities we already have included, like bike storage and bike racks. Along this process as well, I've been working closely with the councilman who asked me to meet with the community members. We've met with the community and neighborhood members over 6 times in private meetings and public meetings. And as well, he asked that we implement their feedback, which I've done, and we've implemented many comments this board has asked and requested into this project, and he is in support of this development. This board's approval of what I'm presenting today is in line with many of the other developments it has already approved and is on the low side of the density city planning is encouraging for transit-oriented developments like this one. The corridor, for example, is over 150 units per acre. 41 West is over 115 units per acre. 50 West, which was just approved last week, is over 125 units per acre. Church and State is over 160 units per acre, and an existing building or a historical building in Ohio City called the Guernsey, for example, is over 141 units per acre. Also, before we get into the package, I wanted to bring up some context. We've got some height context, but also some basic density of how buildings along Lorraine currently return into single-family and two-family zone neighborhoods. So you have a number of buildings starting down on West 25th. The Lorraine and West 28th goes 950 feet from Lorraine down, bringing buildings into the neighborhood. Lorraine and West 32nd, where many know Ohio City provisions, the building returns 340 feet down into the neighborhood. Lorraine and Fulton, the office building where our office is located, abuts a single-family house and goes over 300 feet into down Fulton from Lorraine. Our 41 West building is over 225 feet off of Lorraine. The McCafferty Center off of 44th in Lorraine, which is directly across from this property, is over 200 feet. Currently, our site on West 44th the commercial uses extend past us, and that goes over 360 feet into the neighborhood. Our building stops about 260 feet into the 45th side of the street. The townhomes on West 47th, directly west of this project, goes around 300 feet into the neighborhood. West 48th is around 240 feet. Lorraine and West 50th, another property about 200 feet plus. Jumping down the street, Lorraine and West 58th is over 570 feet where there's townhome style apartments. A new proposal that was just presented, I think in the last meeting or two, at West 48th for apartments, mixed use, similar to what we're proposing, goes over 215 feet into the neighborhood as well. And listening and hearing some of the comments, Ohio City is a mixed use neighborhood. It's been like this for hundreds, or not hundreds, but over 100 years. You have instances of retail, office, and apartments abutting single family homes throughout the neighborhood. There's several apartments in two-family districts already. Franklin West, which was approved in the past year or two from this board. Franklin Manor, which is at 5212 Franklin, is apartments in two-family. Clinton West Apartments, the West Virginia Building, which is an old historic type of apartments at West 28th. The Guernsey Apartments at 28th and Franklin. The Heisey Apartments at West 28th. 29th Street Apartments, the Franklin Loft Condos, the Franklin Plaza, Nikolai Condos, all these different properties, large multifamily uses abutting and in two-family districts. You have several retail buildings from Ohio City Provisions, the Phoenix Coffee Building, many know Johnny Mango's, the Petite Triangle, Calu's Marketplace on 47th and Bridge, Mason's Creamery is on this same block, is in a two-family district. Office buildings such as CMSO's on West 47th in Lorraine, K2M Design Building, the Cleveland Seed Bank at 3606 Bridge, West Side Cleaning Company at 4005, all go there. Buildings specifically, 3 to 4 stories directly next to residential homes. You have Clinton West, the Dexter at 2800 Franklin, the Guernsey Apartments, Nikolai Condos, Phoenix Coffee Building on West 30th, Cleveland Seed Bank again, K2M Building is next to houses, the Petite Triangle abuts homes, the Heisey Apartments abuts homes, Lutheran Hospital, for example, abuts homes on multiple sides, St. Ignatius abuts homes on all different sides, Kinez Townhomes on West 47th. Those have single families directly across and next to it. West Virginia Building, another historic type of property, is abutting single family homes, and many more. Several here. But what we're presenting, and we have been presenting, we've implemented tons of feedback from the neighbors, from the boards that we've met with. It was implemented in this building from your board's feedback to simplify the exterior, set back the building along Lorraine, add more brick to the building, keep the existing building on Lorraine. After we've done that, modify the connection of the new building to the existing building, break up the north facade to include a courtyard as a comment directly from this board, creating a U type of shape along the northern side of the building. Adding trees along the perimeter in the tree lawn. We've also added trees along the north side of the property. We've flipped stair towers. We've adjusted roof lines and made numerous other changes, all in response, which we think we've had a tremendous experience and really great feedback from the community, from businesses, from the different boards. And we're excited to move this on to the next step. And so what we've got here today is our final review for this board, and we're looking forward to moving on from here. We have presented something just as well for context, that is the color of the siding. We do have an alternate siding color. I'll let the architects kind of more eloquently describe what the other alternative option is. Unfortunately, we weren't able to submit that in time for this meeting. However, it's generally what we plan to bring to the landmarks review after this. So with that, I'll turn it over to the architects and let them go through the specific changes we've made since our last time. And then also, Dan, you might want to speak your thing.
Yeah, I was just going to say before we get into the actual meat and bones of the presentation, this was tabled by this committee on May 4th at your meeting then. So we'll need to untable it before we get into the full presentation.
Okay.
Do we have a motion to untable?
Moved on table.
Second?
I'll second.
All right, please call the roll, Dan.
Keeping up with a pattern today. Mr. Frandorf? Mr. Lozier?
Yes.
Mr. Sandbury?
Yeah.
Mr. Talley,
Yes.
and Mr. Wall.
Yeah,
All right, thank you. The motion to untable passes. Sorry, I didn't get that sooner, but you guys can go ahead and proceed with your presentation.
Absolutely.
Hey, Dan, one quick question before we get started. Has this gone to landmarks yet? And do we have any feedback from previous presentations that might be relevant?
So this did go to landmarks conceptually after you guys saw it conceptually earlier in the year. I can pull up some feedback from what was said at the landmarks meeting, and then at I guess your guys' feedback. It was all very landmarks basically reiterated a lot of what you said, but I can pull that while they're going through their presentation, and then provide you some feedback on that after the presentation.
Awesome. Yeah,
That's
that
okay.
I think it'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I guess with that, I guess Chad, you want to introduce your architects and
Yes.
let them at it?
So we've got Tim, Yev, and Etienne, I believe, on here from MA Design, and I'll let them go through the intricate details. It's a really nice building they've helped put together, and excited to share it with you all.
Hi, this is Evgeny from MA Design. If we could go ahead. So I think we've gone through a bit of the context, so we can skip past the initial site context slides, I think, and just go ahead to the actual building. So looking at the building, we have gone through, added additional planting around the site, taking into account the future learning developments that are expected for the area, and moving forward, one more slide here. Sorry, next slide. Yeah. There we go. All right, so we've modified the design a little bit. So there aren't too many significant changes to the plan aside from taking into consideration some feedback from the city to rearrange entrances and exits for the building based on those comments. But aside from that, for the most part, the plan shouldn't be too surprising based on what was previously seen. The layout has been slightly modified, so it's not quite the same, but that's more evident on the upper level. So if we go on to the next slide, you'll see that we have taken into account the openings toward the north, sort of reducing the mass of the building, so it doesn't seem like one big wall along the north there. Moving forward, if you look at if we go to the fourth floor slide, you'll see that we have taken into consideration some setbacks all around the building to reduce the massiveness of the building, so that the fourth floor does not appear as imposing as it did in the original presentation. Moving on to the 2 slides forward, I believe. So over here, one of the changes that Chad was well, first of all, so we have simplified the design of the building. We've added a lot more brick along the front, changed the signage a little bit, modified the connections so that it's not as so that it doesn't overpower the existing building the way it originally did. So it's a much lighter connection than it previously was. And hopefully it makes it fit more seamless along that elevation, along the south elevation there. And regarding the change that Chad was talking about earlier, where we have some of the lighter panels on the first, second, and third floor, where we have the siding there, that is a slightly darker color, similar to what we have on the middle portion on the south elevation to the right of the brick portion there you see there. So that's sort of more the color that you would see if you looked at the landmarks presentation that we will be submitting later on. But moving forward to the next slide, You can see that we have simplified the design, so it's not as busy. It's more screened. We have more trees there. You have building. You have more openness towards the residential area, um, and it's also broken up a little bit more so that it's not just a massive wall the way it once might have been. Um, Moving along to the next slide. So here you can sort of see a better view of what you would have along the Lorraine elevation, where we have um, our brick building coming up alongside the existing building with a sort of deconstructed connection piece between them, so that it gives them a little bit of space, makes it uh, gives it a bit more respect for the original existing building there, and still allows us to have our addition and to take advantage of it. Um, Moving on to the next image, just another view here, just to give you a bit of context. As it comes back and we have our brick from our Lorraine elevation portion, as it sort of fades away and turns the corner there, where you see the brick end and transitions to the other portions of the building that are pulled back farther uh, the from the neighboring site. Going on to the next image. Over here, based on comments that we have received. We have sort of gone back and forth with this elevation and tried to find the right height to make it fit the context around it, fit the rest of the building, and make it a better addition to the community. And this is where we feel like this is a nicer addition than where we previously had it, where it still feels like a walk-up unit. You still have a sort of residential scale to it, um, but it still feeds into and connects with the rest of the overall building. Moving on to the next image. And over here we have the 45th elevation, where it sort of it should feel like townhouses and walk-up units, and uh, it should. We're hoping that this will help enliven the city and give a more vibrant sense of community to the area. Moving on. Um, we can probably skip over these, but these are just a few more images of the building. All right. And as we get into the next slides, this goes through some of the materials in more detail. I won't get too hung up on which material goes where, but I'm happy to address any questions about the materials that may exist. But if we could just like scroll through these. So for the most part, we're going to be using brick along the lower levels. Um, the plan is currently largely for hardy siding, flat siding along the upper levels. We do have some panels under some of the windows, and I know that has been a bit of a sore point, but they are there for a functional purpose, and they're intended to help screen the air conditioning units for the apartments. And as we go through these next few images, I believe should be a few enlargements of some of the elevations, some of the storefronts, the walk-up areas, balconies. And just to clarify, the intention for the green wall is not to have a planted green wall, but to have an artificial green wall. We have some materials that we have selected towards that, and that we have called out towards the end of the material list as well. And I believe they should be getting close to the end of the material callouts here. So here we have the connection to the existing building, where the intent is to have the existing building become sort of a lobby space, uh, and it should connect, or it should serve uh, the main building as a sort of community area on the ground level. All right, then one more image for the material breakdowns, and then after that, it should largely be individual material presentations, just showing details on what materials we're going with, and or at least intending to at this point, and yeah, and some wall sections showing connections. So yeah, this one, and then one more after this. All right, and yeah, the next slides just go over some yeah some of the existing buildings that were being demolished and some of the materials that or specific materials that we are referencing throughout the project. We can go ahead and go through these or skip through them depending on whether the review board is familiar with them already. Yeah, largely we're trying to go for a sort of warm color tone for the building. Right, and thank you for listening to our presentation, and I'm happy to address any questions that may have come up or anything that you were wondering about that was not clarified during the presentation.
Right. Thank you, Yev. We have received some public comments. So I'm going to ask Jessica, and those have all been emailed to you guys or shared with you through Dropbox. So I'm going to ask Jessica from our office here to summarize the public comments that we've received directly, and then if someone, I don't know if Ben is able to, I know they sent out a summary of the co-urbanized comments, but I don't know if Ben, after Jessica's done, if you want to give a quick summary of those, but we'll let Jessica go now.
Thanks, Dan. So we received about 36 comments before the cutoff on Tuesday. Of the comments, 6 of those were in support, 30 of those were not in support. The comments in support noted the project fitting into the existing fabric of the Lorraine corridor, the approval and support for additional retail and density along Lorraine, and the increased residential density in Ohio City, and also noted the revitalization of Lorraine and West 45th in positive. Some of the concerns that were noted from the public comments were concerned on functionality and appropriateness of the entry and exit location on West 44th, the additional curb cut in the historic district, and visibility from the garage entrance for pedestrians and bikers, a lack of addressing or including changes or adjustments in response to community, committee, and commission feedback, inappropriate massing and scale for historic districts, the variances that would be required, having concern on those, noting the inappropriate height for the two-family district. Majority of the building is located within a two-family district with a height limit of 35 feet. Appropriateness of the connection to the existing building along Lorraine as dwarfing the historic building. They noted the materiality with preference for no vinyl in the historic district, the excessive taupe siding, incongruent brick placement, and the metal garage grate inappropriate for the historic district. Comments also noted the traffic and parking along West 44th and West 45th concerns, as well as safety concerns with additional usage in cars along West 44th and 45th. They noted the density should be appropriate for the two-family district along 44th and 45th, and that the building was too close to the neighboring residential properties on 44th. They noted the lack of a buffer space between the residential property and the new construction, and safety with regard to such a large number of units directly next to a gas station. They noted support for appropriate density along Lorraine and West 44th and 45th, proportional to the surrounding architecture, and to a desire to connect and strengthen the neighborhood instead of alienating it, and noted it's intrusive into the residential neighborhoods.
All right, thank you, Jessica. Mr. Trimble, did you want to summarize the co-urbanized comments, or?
Certainly. Thank you, Dan. Ben Trimble, Chief Real Estate Officer, Ohio State Incorporated. So this project has been listed on Co-Urbanize for several months now. Co-Urbanize is a third-party proprietary system that we use to collect community feedback. It includes a website that displays drawings and allows residents to post feedback to things, see updates when they are made to drawings and proposals as it goes through the process. We've had over 5,000 website views for this project. It has 67 followers and has about over 250 total comments. Co-Urbanize, this summary was sent to the committee earlier this morning. It was pulled yesterday, so it does include comments from as late as Tuesday. So on sentiments on this project, we've had 25% of the comments were listed as positive, 43% were listed as neutral, and 32% were listed as negative. Among the positive comments, very similar to what Jessica has already described, that the increase in density on Lorraine is desirable to support businesses, to support walkability, to support transit, a number of other things that the project, we've had a number of negative comments that actually asked for more density and less parking. We have a number of neutral comments, folks questioning things like street trees. I think that there are some additions to those comments. The negative comments have been very consistent with what was expressed by Jessica also, that the density is too high here. The parking level is not to code. The height and the setbacks are not in keeping with neighboring property owners' ideas of what they'd like to see for the site. So very consistent with the same comments that Jessica has already read.
Thank you, Ben. I don't know, Mr. Chair, do you want me to kind of do a quick summary of the commission comments from the conceptual review?
Yeah.
Before you guys get into it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to kind of summarize from the meeting minutes from that meeting, so bear with me. So there were comments about it being a challenging site and there being support for multifamily in the area, but a feeling that the proposed density along Lorraine was a bit too much. Suggestion to reduce the fourth floor back from Lorraine, and simplifying it, the plan through materiality. There was a note that the west elevation had a successful residential feel, but there were some awkward connections to the south elevation between the existing building and the new construction. Felt that there's an interesting project with, basically three fronts, each having a different architectural language. There's the idea that maybe treating them as three separate projects since they had such different relationships with the street. Excitement to see how it would all develop. Other comments that the proposal's overall massing was too large for the site. It overwhelmed the remaining building, being the funeral home and the surrounding buildings and residential homes on the side streets. There's a preference for not demolishing any more of the existing building on the site, being the Nunn-Coleman Funeral Home, and a note of concerns for the impact to the residential areas on 44th and 45th. Also reiteration of parking and traffic concerns, which we've heard. Comments about the egress, I guess being on 44th, the concern that it would impact traffic with it being a one-way street. Also, I guess other comments that, you know, if the building were more unified, it kind of has abrupt changes from 2 to 4 stories. Reduction of the mass at the highest level could reduce the impact of that. Just the overall scale of it. Yeah, and then a comment that the, you know, well, this was well in the zoning for height. There was the context of this was important within the historic district and stressing that the front facade of the funeral home should be retained. That's pretty much it, which again, I think is very similar to the comments that this committee had when this came for concept and then when it was tabled previously. I did receive a written, I guess, some comments from Ms. Marinucci, who is a member of this committee but couldn't be here, so I'll just read what she submitted. And she obviously won't be voting on this, but she wanted to share her opinions. She says she continues to appreciate the applicant's engagement and willingness to respond to feedback. She feels that several design changes in this final iteration have taken a step backwards. While she doesn't have any issues with the height of the project nor the number of units proposed, she feels that ultimately the site plan is just not appropriate for the shape of the site. Lastly, she would not support any vinyl material. I guess that being said, since the Landmarks Commission and this committee saw this in concept, there have been a number of changes to the site plan. So all of the comments I read from the Landmarks Commission's April 13th meeting, yeah, not all of them are as relevant anymore. But I think there's a lot of discussion about the scale and all that, which has not really changed too much. And I guess from a staff level, you know, we're interested to hear the feedback from the committee but I was curious to dig into and hear more about how the historic building was going to be treated. It looks like there's proposed changes to the kind of the storefront level system, and then the windows. It looks like the fenestration is changing. I didn't know if they're cutting 2 new openings or just 1. So I guess I was interested in hearing more about how the front facade of the funeral home was going to be treated. But with that, I'll be quiet and let you guys get into it.
Well, I'll agree with that, Dan, that was the one thing I think was left out of the presentation. I'd like to hear more about before we start commenting is the disposition of the front of the existing building. And the fenestration, the opening. So could one of you guys speak to that before we get into our comments?
Yeah, I can jump in here. So the existing building currently has 2 smaller windows along the storefront. Consider them type of a double hung size window. What we're looking to do to create more of an open lobby space internally is lower those windows. There is a couple sandstone type of blocks that we want to take it down 1 course, which is where you see that lower transom effectively showing on the screen right now. I'd have to ask the architects. I think we're going to widen these windows as well, or widen the width of that. Above that storefront opening is an existing window that generally is going to stay the same. To the left of that, above the existing entrance door, there is currently a smaller single window, which we want to open up a little bit and make it match the existing window on the right side. So generally, it's staying the same. We'll be, like I said, reiterating, widening the window above the door and lowering the windows along the street facade, giving it more of a typical storefront type of appearance.
Just to add on to what Chad was saying, is the storefront on the ground floor, I believe it is the same width as it currently is, but we are lowering the sill just to make it a much more usable, commercial friendly space. And then the window above the door is is larger just to kind of get more light into that space because there's not a lot of windows on that front. So we're trying to just make it a much more usable, kind of more appropriate space for the current user.
All right, thank you for that. I guess I would start there with that. I think that more modern storefront going down by the floor is not appropriate for this. It takes too much away from the original character of the building. If, you know, the opening width as it is fine, but I would raise the sill up to where that horizontal rail is, you know, I think would be more appropriate. And even if you put a storefront type window system in there, I think maintaining some brick, you know, so that it seems more like a cut opening than a modern storefront would be a little more appropriate here. Second floor windows, not sure I entirely agree with what you're doing, but I think it's okay not having a picture in my mind of what it looks like now. And so as far as that goes, I guess I still have the objection to the overall massiveness of this, and I guess you know, Chad made a big argument about, you know, naming off so many places that have characteristics like this. I think, as far as I can tell, all the ones that he mentioned, I don't think we've ever seen a project that has such a complicated boundary to it, which creates so much perimeter that this puts it in a class by itself, and that's sort of the essence of some of my problems with this massiveness, as opposed to most of the other ones. Some of them occupy an entire block from corner to corner as far as the frontage, which this does, but not all along the frontage, which gives it so much more perimeter, and I think makes it appear to be so much more massive that that's some of my problem with it. I guess I have a question about the. I appreciate that you have altered the two elevations contiguous with the perimeter of the gas station property to make it not so monolithic, and changing some materials, adding some brick and so forth. I think that goes a long way to calm some of my concern about that. So I think you've done a fine job of improving those elements. Much less objectionable now, but you know, when I look at those two elevations, they're massive, you know, and they're contiguous, and they form a backdrop that, you know, is different than if you had an entire, you know, block frontage like the 45th Street elevation, for example. That's the longest contiguous elevation. I think you've done a nice job with that, but because of the confusing the complications of the you know, property configuration, it I have a little trouble with that. And if you had been able to take out a couple of bites from the fourth floor by introducing the balcony and losing a couple of units up there to have some, you know, up and down variation in this, but I am more accepting of it now than I have been previously. Improved in a lot of ways, but I think there is still a number of things that, like that mapping of taking a couple of bites out of the fourth floor here and there to put some bigger setbacks, or possibly things like that that would make it more palatable to me. And I guess I think I understand the siding, that you now only have one siding material proposed, the composite hardy lap siding. Is that correct? Looks like there's just that one siding material. Is that right?
Doug, it shows vinyl siding in parts of it.
No,
Yeah.
So largely we have moved away from the vinyl siding. It should largely be the fiber cement hardy.
Largely or all?
I'm not aware
I
of vinyl siding on this one, is there?
I reviewed it about 4 hours ago and was on there.
Well, I apologize. I think our intention on this project, because of the fronts where it faces, was a hardy siding material, no vinyl siding on this building.
yes, I can't think of where we still have the vinyl siding. I'll have to check um, with the rest of our team on that. But
Oh, I see some right here.
I
Vinyl
see
siding. Yeah.
that might have. I apologize for that. The comment might not have been updated, but that should be hardy.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
So I want to ask a question that goes along the lines of a lot of what Doug has mentioned about the shape of the site and Mia had mentioned in her commentary. You know, Chad, how would you approach this project if the corner of 45th and Lorraine, where that car dealership was part of the project? You know, my concern is that, you know, we're trying to do a lot here, and I'm not convinced that this is the right project for this site at this time. Just thinking about what could happen in the future if that parcel was part of the larger project, and how that would make the project better. And I'm not saying that you should, you know, purchase that or do whatever, but I'm just thinking, you know, down the line, you know, is this the right project at this time for this site?
Understood. And I guess one comment we had heard early on when we met with Landmarks on site is the car dealership currently has a fairly historic, I think, former gas station on it, and that building might not even be allowed to be torn down. It might be, it might not be, but so it's kind of a hard to predict what would happen in that scenario.
I largely agree with the comments from Doug and Chris regarding massing and scale, and from the community comments, recognizing that design review is not a popularity contest, but it is worth noting that 83% of those who wrote in for this hearing opposed it, and in the co-organized 256, only 25% positive. I think that indicates that there's some deep community concern, and reviewing those comments, a lot of them do have to deal with the overall scale, and I think that they're right on it. Going down from there, which is the number one concern, I'll detail some design concerns as well. I'm glad to hear that the vinyl was a mislabeled element and that has been removed, but there are still vinyl windows listed, and especially where those are public right away facing, that would be inappropriate. When it comes to the 44th side, Dan, if we could pull that up there. And just by way of comparison, the next item on the agenda, 4732 Lorraine Avenue, you know, that site plan, that site also stretches to residential streets behind Lorraine, but does not cover the entirety of the parcel like this does. And I think that leads to some of these issues. So what you see, Dan, if we could go to slide 17. Yeah, right there, for example, you know, the switch in materiality from brick to hardy, you know, you'd be better off if you went all the way up. If you're going to switch materials, there needs to be a distinction in the plane. There's no setback there, it just keeps going, but switches materials without a lot of rhyme or reason to it. And as it abuts the historic residential district, we want to pay more attention to the fenestration, the historic fenestration of that street, and having the windows grouped as they are, sort of 2 over 2 like that, it not matching the fenestration of the homes on 44th or throughout the historic district. If you'd want to separate those, you'd want those to be more in line with fenestration throughout the neighborhood. The green wall, look, that's up on the fourth floor. I don't know if we're going to see it, but I think it's not a very good idea. The fiber cement underneath the windows there, I'm not sure the purpose of that. That should just be brick. There's no need to introduce an element there. Seems unnecessary. Can we go down to the Lorraine frontage? Oh, just pause there then. We can pause there. Go back. Yeah. So same comment there. You switch materiality up on the third floor, but there's no substantial setback to warrant that switch in materiality. I would just continue the brick all the way up and again remove the hardy panels underneath those windows. Doug touched on the windows on the historic building. I think I agree with that. Doug, if we go to page, or Dan, if we go to page 15, the Lorraine frontage. Yeah, the same comments Doug made about the historic building. I agree with the hardy panels under the windows on the new frontage. I don't think are warranted or necessary. Where you have the deck up there on the fourth floor, I think that parapet wall, because it's new and not really related to the cornice, I would push that back a few feet from the cornice line there.
Would an image of the existing historic building be helpful for the discussion? I just pop it up on Google Maps real quick, or?
Sure. And I'm not sure from our site visit that the windows that are there now are the historic windows. I cannot recall. I know that the grates over them are not.
Yeah, I think if you could pop that up, Dan, that would be great.
But while we're waiting that, I'll conclude my comments. I think that overall, yeah, okay, we'll go there. Yeah, so you're adding a new opening, which it's hard to tell if that window. Well, the windows themselves are clearly not historic, but the openings, without historic photographs, I couldn't say for certain.
Yeah, I believe.
I think it fundamentally changes the character of this facade that we're trying to maintain the character of. I understand the intent from a interior programmatic standpoint, but I think that the changes that are being proposed to this facade, I think fundamentally change what we're trying to retain.
Agreed. So, in maintaining, when you restore that's the original plate roof with its forced perspective as the tiles get smaller as they go higher. That's a critical element that needs to be preserved. But overall, I think the main concern does come back to what Landmarks, what the community has consistently been concerned with, and that is the overall site plan and massing on it. It occupies the entirety of the parcels that have been cobbled together, and it creates these issues that I think are unforced errors, if you will, on this project. And I think that it'd be better to look at it like the next project on our agenda, which doesn't take such a consuming approach to the parcels. With that, I'll leave it.
I think I'll follow up and say the same thing. I think I've said this throughout the entire process. The site is 3 separate sites. I think that was said in the Landmarks comments as well. And it really reads as 3 separate sites as we walk around it. And each site needs to be addressed separately. And I don't think that one massive building is going to solve those 3 separate views and 3 separate landscapes, I guess. I don't think that, I think that these have always wanted to be 3 separate buildings that somehow connect and marry each other in the middle. And I don't think that that's been as successful as I was hoping it would be. I think I appreciate all the effort that's gone into making some of these minor changes, changing windows, changing materials. But the base issue still hasn't changed and hasn't been addressed. And those issues still haven't been explored. So I don't know. I don't know that any minor comments on the elevations are going to help, because I think ultimately the massing is still the big elephant in the room.
I can echo what was said. I actually like I like the change in materials to fiber cement, lap siding. I like the 2-story and 3-story brick features along the side streets. I think that kind of integrates well with the surroundings. The massing, it's its own thing that, folks are taking issue with. I do like the way that you reconcile the design. Like, I think the face that the face overlooking the neighborhood has been reconciled pretty well. I don't mind the panels underneath the windows. I can see how that has kind of unified the design and presented on every face. I yeah, I like the way the materials have kind of brought the building down to scale. But as has been said before, um, the folks are taking issue with the massing, and I do think it's struggling to be something. And it's been difficult to reconcile that. I think the facades look a bit more homogeneous than I've seen before, so I'm happy with that. That building in the front, I I see um I see what you're trying to do. I have to agree with the previous comments on the white building in the front. There's, I guess I kind of, let me just flip over to the, flat on elevation, the south elevation. Yeah, I think there's like some reconciling of those like window opening heights, that still needs to happen, but, I I I I see what you're trying to do, but I just kind of want to echo what was said previously about these windows and about these openings and how they're lining up with the openings below. And I believe that storefront could raise a little bit to be in line with that horizontal. Um, but yeah, as said before, the massing seems to be a major issue. Like I said, I like the way that everything has been reconciled, though.
Well, it seems to me that we're pretty much all unanimous that the elephant in the room has not really been addressed, kind of danced around a lot of this other stuff nicely and provided minor improvements, but don't see enough effort in terms of addressing that base concern of, you know, building being too massive in appearance, regardless of what the sort of argument Chad tried to make earlier about all the other properties that have, similar characteristics. The nature of this site is not, is completely different than those other sites. It's not a contiguous, rectangle or anything close to it. It's the most unusual amalgam of properties pieced together for this kind of a project that I believe we've ever seen. And as Michael said, you've got three different elevations here that ought to be expressed a little bit more, at least, as three different projects instead of this one contiguous meandering perimeter. So I guess my question to the developer is, since you apparently not been willing to entertain any of these suggestions to reduce the math, which would probably mean losing a couple of units here and there, possibly, to break down that math, is that something you're entirely unwilling to entertain?
We've made substantial changes, and based on the feedback, we're looking to take a vote today, and we'll move it to landmarks to move this project to the next steps.
Okay, well then, I guess on that basis, we've heard comment from everyone. Would anyone care to make a motion?
I will move to disallow for the reasons stated by all committee members, with the primary reason being the site plan massing.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Dan, would you please call the roll?
All right, that was Michael that seconded, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, motion to recommend disapproval based on comments, but primarily focused on the site plan and massing. Mr. Frondorf? Mr. Lozier?
Yes.
Mr. Sambury?
Yes.
Mr. Talley?
No.
And Mr. Wall?
Yeah.
Right, Mr. Chair, the motion passes 4-1. So yes, Chad, we can talk this afternoon about next steps. Yeah, you have the right to proceed to the landmarks commission with the recommendation from this committee to disapprove. So yeah, we'll talk this afternoon.
Thank you, and I do appreciate everyone's feedback. It's been well received. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Right, jumping from projects for review of certificate of appropriateness over to concept reviews, we have case OC 23-29. This is 4732 Lorraine Avenue, storefront renovation and new construction. We have Wesley Harper here, who's the architect on this project. So Wesley, if you just want to let me know, want me to click through the slides and take it away.
Got it. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wes Harper with Horton Harper Architects, and we're here to discuss 4732 Lorraine Avenue. Next slide, please. The site that we have is between 47th and 48th Street on the north side of Lorraine Avenue. Right now, they are, it's kind of a mix of three parcels, part of a fourth. There's two parcels that face Lorraine right now, one of which contains an existing structure, and then the other is a vacant parcel that was purchased from OCI earlier this year. You can see we kind of have a leg that comes off the northern portion of the property cluster. That is a two-family parcel that faces West 48th Street. There was then, the typical Ohio City context north of that. That parcel would be proposed to contain the vehicular access to the parking lot behind the proposed buildings. The zoning in this area is local retail. It has an urban frontage overlay with a number 2 height district that allows 60 foot at the building line. And then if you set back, I believe at a 2-to-1 ratio, you can go up to 90. We won't be getting anywhere near that. But just for context, I thought I'd mention that. Per the Ohio Building Code, the new construction portion of this project would be considered an addition to 4732, which is the existing 2-story building that we'll be looking at. It's my understanding that with it being considered an addition, the parking ratio required by the zoning code is only 25% of the typical requirement in the code. And then due to the urban frontage overlay, the floor area ratio maximum is overridden, and there's no maximum. So with that, if we go to the next page. Here's just an aerial view locating us along the Lorraine corridor. Obviously downtown is to the north and east. We were kind of bookended between 2 and 2.5 story structures on this portion of Lorraine. Next. We've got some historical photos that we've gotten from the library. Here you see 4732, which is the building to the right. That would be the building that we would be renovating and adding the new construction to. The 2 structures to the west are existing, slightly changed, of course, relative to this. Next. Here's an image of the former building at the corner of 47th and Lorraine. Both of the buildings that face Lorraine in this view have been demolished. This is from 1937. Next, please. Here we have a view from 1968 of the Seamus O building that is currently there. You can see it's a 2-story structure that is elevated a handful of feet above grade to make it a little bit taller than a typical 2-story building on Lorraine. Next. Here is the former context that was across the street on Lorraine. Right now is the Urban Community School. We just want to show this for historical context. Next. Here we have the existing condition of the site. The photo on the left shows our building 4732, which would be renovated in the center, and then the vacant parcel to the east. The picture on the right is got the grass covered lot that was purchased from OCI earlier this year, and then a parking lot for the existing 2-story building west of that. And then at the corner, on the far right of that right picture, is the Seamus O building. Next. Here's a view looking at the western facade of Seamus O. They have a good amount of windows on this facade, which are technically illegal, as the building is right on the property line, if I'm not mistaken. But we're going to respect that facade and pull off our building 4 and 5 feet. And we'll get into that as we get the site plan. To the right, we have a view looking to the northwest from 47th and Lorraine. Next. Here's a view of the West 48th frontage. The existing house to the left is the kind of the next parcel from the parcel that we would be utilizing for the vehicular access. We wouldn't be constructing anything on that site, but it would be heavily landscaped to act as kind of a visual buffer to the parking lot, which is further in the site. The building kind of, you look at the Cadillac in the foreground, the building that's kind of in the middle, let's say above the front windshield of that car, the developer, Jim Mikito, who is also the owner of Forest City Shuffleboard and has developed the Amelia, which has went through this committee. He's been working with the owner of the building in the middle to kind of either give an easement or purchase a part of that property to allow our parking lot a little easier access. So we'll get into that as we move along here. But this is the West 48 frontage. Next, please. Here we have Urban Community School across the street, of course. It's a mix of some new structures that have been constructed over the past handful of years, and you start to consider the new Lorraine bikeway that's going to be going through here. So there's going to be a lot of changes to the street here, of course. At the upper right, we have the existing structure at 48th and Lorraine. It's going through what looks like a renovation right now. And then below that, we have the two-story building directly west of 4732 Lorraine. Next. You're all very familiar with the context. I don't think we have to spend much time here, but from our perspective, Lorraine is obviously a very eclectic street in terms of building materials, how their storefronts are organized, bay windows, heights, color. It's really, a street that we're very excited to deal with from a design perspective. Adding signage eventually could be a big component of this project. And, we're very intrigued by all of that, the different material transitions. And so that has kind of bled its way into our minds as we've been designing this. Next. Next. Some examples of different heights, different materials. Next. Again, you're all very familiar with this context. Next. This page, I think, is interesting, where you have examples of a lot of different either material or color of material changes. It's one of the things that sticks out to me as I walk down Lorraine, is this kind of unique mishmash that's occurred over the years, and what gives it a lot of its depth, in my opinion. To the right, we have a handful of buildings. They each have somewhat different storefront configurations, and those are the sorts of things that more of the granular details that we want to bring to our project. Next. So our site plan north is to the, or plan north is to the upper portion of the page. You can see that we have essentially the renovated structure, 4732 Lorraine, and then a new construction that is added to that. The plan is to rehab the existing building to be a mix of retail or restaurant, and then have that building also contain the amenities for the new mixed use and apartment building. To the rear of the site, we have 23 parking spaces. Of course, we're accessing that parking lot off 48th. And you can see the landscaping buffer that we're proposing, and then it transitions into surface parking kind of halfway down the parcel. The area that's dashed in a bit of a triangle shape is the area that is currently the neighbor's parcel. And again, we'd either be hopefully purchasing that portion or getting an easement from that neighbor. Mr. Mikito has a really good relationship with him, and we're hoping that comes through here pretty soon. More towards Lorraine, you can see that our building has a 4-foot setback from the Seamus O building for about 40% of the eastern frontage. Then it pushes back a bit to 5 feet so that we can have windows on our side. And that transition from 4 to 5 feet is also a material transition that we're very conscious of those material transitions, and it sounds like this committee is as well, based on the comments on the last project. Our structure, the new portion is 5 stories, roughly 23,300 feet, contains 23 rental apartments and an additional 2,259 square feet of retail, which would face Lorraine. It also contains a relatively narrow access way into the apartment tenant lobby, which we'll start to look at here. Next. Here we have the basement plan. We would have some retail storage in this basement, a bike room with 23 bike parking spaces, tenant storage, utilities, and access from the elevator to the upper levels. The restaurant or retail in the existing structure would also have access to that basement. Next. At ground level, you can see we're proposing 3 relatively small retail spaces. It's been important for Jim from the beginning to have these spaces be a bit smaller, which lend themselves to local businesses and entrepreneurs. I know banks typically want to have larger spaces for these sorts of projects, but this is critical to Mr. Makito, and it allows multiple entries on Lorraine to visually activate that facade. In yellow, you can see we have the tenant entry. It's a vestibule and tenant lobby. The mailroom is facing the street, so we're working hard to have no areas of unusable space facing Lorraine, so that it's constantly activated with eyes on the street. On this floor, we also have 3 smaller rental units that would face the rear. They each have what would be kind of their own little green space at ground level. It's gated from the parking lot, and that entry is set back further from the facade to get a little more covered. But those would be full 1-bedroom units. Then you can see the new building is basically flanked by new stairways. Next. The upper levels, we don't have to get too detailed here, but you can see that we are proposing bay windows that extend over the sidewalk on Lorraine. 2 of the 3 units that face Lorraine have Juliet balconies, which kind of show up a little bit in the renderings that we could talk about. And then the 2 units in the back have balconies sitting above that first floor. We also have a tenant roof deck, which is kind of sandwiched in between the existing 2-story building and our proposed new structure. Next. 3rd floor, that 2-story building obviously drops off here. Next. Here you can see that we're proposing to push back the 4th and 5th levels of the apartments so that we can get balconies that face Lorraine, and then also take the edge off of the overall mass project. Basically creating 3-story buildings as you're walking on the northern side of Lorraine. You would not see these upper 4 levels. But otherwise, the plan is the same, even though they are a bit constrained in their dimensions for the living spaces there. We're comfortable with the dimensions of the bedrooms and living rooms here. It would be tough to set back the building even further here. So just a note. Next. And then here we have our 5th floor, and each unit has a Juliet balcony. Next. So here we have the resulting architecture from the plans. Living in the city and understanding the geometries of Lorraine Avenue, we made a concerted effort to break down the overall scale of this 116-foot long building. wanted to respect the proportions, the heights and widths of windows and buildings themselves. And then also we wanted to be conscious of the transition from one material to the next. So here you can see the 2 3-story portions of the building are very directly kind of sliced to really make that transition stand out. We then at the right have a very narrow construct of brick. And what that's doing is kind of representing a lot of different widths and heights and proportions that we feel are appropriate for Lorraine. And we really are using this as an opportunity to kind of look at different ways of building a larger structure that, you know, there's some sensitivities from the community and the design review committees. But you know, we think that, you know, these sorts of very direct engagements with being conscious of what's going on in Lorraine is helping break the scale of this down. The moving left to right, you can see the existing 2-story structure would be updated in terms of its you know, storefront, but it would be, you know, designed to be a traditional storefront. We would be painting the building kind of a buff beige color. And then to the right of it, we have our narrow tenant entry that would be constructed out of a similarly colored metal panel. And we wanted those to be very similar in color so that we can have kind of a transition from strictly historic structure to the new, but kind of blur that line a bit. And while architecturally, you know, it is quite a contrast, we think that the color being similar can bridge that gap. We're also proposing some built-in planters on that second floor to add a bit of greenery to Lorraine, which there's not much of currently. Hopefully that changes with the bikeway coming soon. To the right, we have kind of the first 3-story structure, which has windows that are similar in proportion to some of the other windows of the existing buildings. They are set back a bit to give a bit more depth to the facade. And then at the Juliet balcony, you know, adding a kind of a perforated metal screen to allow that door to open and have full access in terms of fresh air into the living space is important. At grade, we have large openings for storefronts, and at the base of each of those, we have planting areas, again, to add a bit more vegetation to the street. In our initial overview with Dan and Jessica, you know, we talked about maybe elevating those planting areas to assure their survival through the harsh winter with salt and, you know, snow piling up in that area. So that's something, you know, as we go along, we're going to look at. As we progress to the right, you know, kind of the second 3-story structure, which contains the bay windows that we talked about in plan. Again, we're setting back the windows that are on the property line plane to give a little bit of depth of that, or depth to that facade. And then, you know, pushing out those bay windows 2.5 to 3 feet to really engage the street. Those bay windows are capped with an overhang that protrudes, you know, approximately 4 to 6 inches past the face of the bay windows. And then we have, you know, again, one of these slices that kind of defines the transition from one material to the next. And we go to kind of a more yellowish brick. We then have, you see at the bottom corner there, a gate which would basically stop people from walking down the alley. We look at that as an opportunity to add a bit more color to the street. And then you have the Seamus structure to the right. Above the 3-story portion of the project, we have kind of additional block that's sitting back 6 feet from the Lorraine property line. And then we have an additional brick color there So we have kind of a stacking of elements here. We also have metal railings that would kind of contain the balconies on that 4th floor. But that's set back from the Lorraine facade as well, so that the brick, the masonry is what's really reading on that facade and what you're seeing from street level on that side of the street. Next. Here's another view looking towards the northeast. You can start to get a sense of the depth of the storefronts and how those are all starting to relate to one another. The, let's say, westernmost 3-story portion of the building has protrusions at each window opening, which would control a bit of sunlight in the morning, but then also kind of, again, in a way, 3-dimensionally engages the sidewalk. And you can get a better sense in this image to the setback of the 4th and 5th floors and of where that railing placement sits relative to the masonry. You can also get your first glimpse of the transition from brick along the side to ephes on the side. And again, there's a 1-foot difference in plane at that change in material. Next. Just another view. Next. Here's a view looking towards the northwest. We have Seamus O at right, and then you can start to see a bit more of that goldish yellow brick. And, we think it's an important part of the project in terms of making this feel like a stacking of elements, but still, relating to the different proportions, widths, and heights that exist on Lorraine. Next. Starting to get closer here to the southeast corner of the building, start to get a better idea of the storefront. The windows that face Lorraine. We do have windows that are then on the east and west planes of brick to really open up those storefronts and start to animate the pedestrian experience. Of course, we're not showing really much signage here, but you'd of course have tenant signage that would further animate this scene. Next. Again, getting closer, start to see how the vegetation on that 2nd floor roof deck can add a lot of visual interest to this. And then, the stacking of the different brick elements. I think in this case, the transition doesn't need setting back from each other along the sides. I think it's a pretty powerful kind of still life image. Next. Here you're on the sidewalk on the northern side of Lorraine. You can see that to the right, you would not see the 4th and 5th floors. You're really just experiencing those 2 and 3 level portions of the project. And I also think that the bay windows protruding over the sidewalk go a long way in, again, just getting some depth to the project, both inward and then outward. And then, very simple profile overhang above those bay windows. Next. Here we're looking towards the west on Lorraine. You can see more clearly the additional windows that are on those east and west faces of the storefront as the door is pushed in. I believe it's 4 or 5 feet. And then those entries to the 2 of the 3 retail spaces are defined by those bay windows. So basically adding prominence to those, and signage would do that additionally as well. Next. Here's an image of the rear. Again, this is all ephes. Wanted to keep it pretty simple back here. We have Juliet balconies, you can see at each apartment. And then we kind of played with how tall a portion, at the left of the new structure, there's a balcony sitting on top of the 3rd floor to take advantage of the downtown views from this area. You know, that portion could have been a floor or two lower. Wanted to pick up the square footage for the units and also have you know, a perch to view the city from there. We're still kind of kicking around some ideas of where the trash enclosure would go. In this view, it's not located where it is in the floor plans. It's basically, or it would be located where one of the trees are in this image. So I'm working with Jim to figure out where we want to place that. Next. Material palette. I feel like we've kind of went over most of this, but the bay window and overhang would be a metal material, concealed fasteners, sandstone caps at hopefully the parapet wall, and then the sills at each window, ephes in the rear, aluminum storefront, powder coated aluminum gate along Lorraine, the main entry metal panel to match the paint color for the existing structure, and then perforated metal screens and blackened metal guardrails. Next. This is just a kind of a diagram that was put together to look at the different colors, the widths and heights, less so along this portion of Lorraine. And so this assisted us in finding the right widths for the buildings as we've proposed them. Next. Here we have a zoomed in view of the Lorraine elevation. We've got the heights of the existing structures on either side, and then the tops of parapets on our structure. And this relates back to the material palette previously. Next. West elevation, I think the renderings probably did all the talking for this. Next. East elevation. The portion that is brick type 3, excuse me, does not have any windows. First of all, they're not needed for those units. And then, you know, we couldn't have them anyway because it's 4 feet, a 4-foot setback from the property line. But once we get higher, we've kind of pushed those windows an extra foot into the structure so that we could have windows there. Next. Here we have just an elevation of the rear. Self-explanatory, I'd say. I think that's the last page. Just any comments? I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Wes. I would say you've got this project off to a good start. We not to cut anyone short, but we're well over our our normal time limit here. So
yeah,
so I'll try to keep this concise. I think I like the idea of the bays on the western portion of the building. I think that's a nice, interesting way to break it up. But I think it would look better if you differentiated the bays materially, as in, well, not always, but a lot of bay windows on more historic buildings would be wood versus brick on the facade. I think it would highlight them a little bit more to think about making them out of something else on the front. Your bridge between the two buildings that has the rooftop deck on the second floor, I think that's a terrific idea. But your little L-shaped portal, if you want to call it that, makes it look like you're trying to, from the front, makes it look like you're trying to tie it to the adjacent building, existing building, as opposed to being a neutral or its own thing. I would have tried to push the, you know, flip the L shape so it attached to your building and not the existing building, and or you know, make it the dark material like the, excuse me, the eastern building, to kind of make it more neutral, set it back. I guess I'm not fond of the idea of trying to tie it visually or materially or color wise to the historic building. And I think I was a little concerned about the 6-foot setback for the 4th and 5th floors. Uh, but I'm satisfied. I think at the moment that 6 feet is probably enough. And I like the way you mixed up the materials and so forth. So those are my initial impressions. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll also be very brief. You heard comments from the prior project. I really like the site plan. I like the massing. I like the design overall. I think there's a lot going for this. I like it how it's set off from the other historic buildings there. My critical comments are just, I think, 2 or 3. With the bump outs there, Doug said different materiality, but I think in reviewing the plans, you're calling for metal there.
Correct.
And I have no problem with metalling. Just my concern is that I've seen spans like that oil pan. So pay careful attention to how they're installed for quality so that you don't see oil panning on the metal there. The retail spaces, I like how you've angled them inward like a historic storefront. I think that's a really nice detail and a good touch. It's not used on retail space number 1. I don't feel strongly about it, but I think it would look nice if all 3 were similar. But again, I do not feel strongly about that.
Okay.
And I've saved my biggest critique for last, and that is the setback on the 4th and 5th floors. I think 6 feet was said. The building, if you look at the rendering from the side, and on mine, Dan, it's page 25 of 38. I don't know if it is for you. Yeah, that works. Yeah, that works too. It still reads like a 5-story building. And so, I'd almost prefer that you have the 4th floor right up, flush and go up 4 floors, and then have the 5th floor set back more. Looking at your floor plan, that might lose you 3 units, but I think it would really improve the overall massing on Lorraine, how it reads on Lorraine. Because right now, I don't think 6 feet is really helping the building read like a 3-story building with setback. I think it would either have to be a more pronounced setback or bring the 4th floor up and push the 5th floor back. That is my main and chief design criticism with it. The rest of it, I think is really well done.
Okay.
And again, I like how you've situated the building. You're not occupying the entire lot, all the parcels. It's well thought out. So if we could address the 4th and 5th floors and that setback, that's my number 1 concern. And with that, I'll stop.
Okay, well, we'll look at it. I don't think picking up some extra square footage on the 4th floor units would be a terrible thing. And maybe that diffuses some of the concern with maybe pushing back a couple more feet. So we'll look at that.
Thank you.
I agree with what's been said previously. I think programmatically, this is a great program. I think everything works with the site plan, and it feels really true to the city and the district. With the historic building, it looks like you've called out to repair or rebuild the storefront. I would be concerned with some of the details that are going back into that in the future, and how you're going to address that. From the historic photos, it looks like those center dividing mullions weren't there, and I would encourage you to try to get a full piece of plate glass in that without the center dividing mullion, and to keep the proportions of the transoms and the storefront windows and all of that as close as possible.
So maybe from, I can't remember which historic photo, that was the first one maybe that showed it, right? Maybe.
Yeah. One of the ones from the city you had. Yeah, that one.
Okay. Yeah, there's no dividers vertically.
Right. it's kind of unclear from the renderings, and I'm sure this will get cleared up as you go along. The doors, I think, are important. Keeping looks like a 7-panel door that's closer to the sidewalk, and then the light above, and I think a 3-panel door on the bottom for the storefront portion would be important to me. As far as the new portion of the building, I think I echo what's already been said. I like the overall nod to the history of the street, but it's a modern. I do feel that the 5th floor is just too big on the front. The 4th floor I'm okay with. If you want to bring that up to the front to the 0 lot line, I think that would be comfortable as well. The 5th floor is just too much. I think it needs to be set back much more. But otherwise, I think it was a great start.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think what we can do is obviously keep the images that we have here with some tweaks that we've talked about, and then basically have an option 2 that has the 4th floor elevated, push back the 5th floor as much as possible. Again, it is incredibly tight to do that, but I'll talk to Jim and see, what he's comfortable with. If we're picking up square footage on the 4th floor, maybe there's some more flexibility in that. Maybe even possibly losing a unit, but having more leasable square footage. So maybe those the 5th floor units are not as deep, but there's maybe 2 bigger units instead of 3 smaller ones. So we'll play around with that. We've designed this in a way so that the open spaces of an apartment, the bedroom, living room, are facing Lorraine. So, maybe the plumbing could still align, but those kind of open spaces can be changed a bit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So thanks, Wes, for the presentation. I agree with all of my colleagues, and I'll keep my comments brief. I really appreciate the simplicity of the materials, the clean massing and detailing, the proportions of the openings, how all of this feels very cohesive, and sort of well defined at this early stage. I think there's some really great opportunities. I think this is a really great opportunity for this sort of missing tooth on this block. I don't disagree with my colleagues about the 4th and 5th floors, but what I would recommend is, as you are sort of maybe studying different opportunities, is to include them in the next series of presentations, just so that we can visualize, the process that you went through, so that I think one of the challenges sometimes is that, we're shown something, we're shown changes, but we don't know how the architect gets from where we started to where we ultimately end up. And I think showing your process a little bit as part of that helps us sort of visualize why you might make certain moves over other moves. But I'm really, I'm excited about this in particular, right around the corner from where I live. So this is exciting.
Nice. Good to hear from you, Chris.
I think it's a wonderful design. Echo what's been previously said. I'm in agreement a bit with Mike about the 5th floor and how far back it is from the front. I know one of the previous suggestions was possibly bring up the I believe the red and black brick portions up to a 4th floor. And I had a thought of, like, what if you just brought up the red portion to a 4th floor and it starts to step and it starts to push and pull with the top rear mass. I think, but I do still think it's close. But if the masses are different sizes, maybe it starts to break it up a little bit. I think the kind of forehead on the windows in the back is a bit is a lot. I love the taller windows. I love how they're in line with the rest of the street. I love these bays in the front and the black portion, and I really I appreciate the suggestion. I think you said that you're working with them to have those planters brought up. Um, whatever the 18 inches or whatever it is along the front. I am not a huge fan of the rear. I'm not a fan of EVIS, to be honest with you. I'm just, ugh. But I do think the rear it's a bit um, dark, maybe, um, for my taste. And then I don't know, is there kind of a banding? Is there brick around the base? It looks like, or is that just shadow?
No, it's basically some sort of fencing that would enclose
Uh,
the outdoor space. But you know, we could possibly add a bit of banding there in masonry at the base. I think that could make a lot of sense, actually.
uh,
I'm seeing it here.
I yeah, I appreciate you being willing to work with us. I am also looking forward to seeing this maybe in a little bit more detail, how things are finished around the windows, where any kind of joints might be, how the brick is being held up above the windows in the front, things like that. I did have a question about just looking at the first floor plan. Was there I'm not 100% sure if is there a requirement for a fully accessible unit in this? I know the unit seemed kind of tight, and it seemed like that on the first floor would have been the only place to have something. And then I know the Ohio Building Code changes are coming in January, so I don't know when this is permitted, but if that's going to affect the size of that restroom on the first floor. I mean, this is all interior, so it's not really our thing. But yeah, I was wondering about kind of accessible. If there are any fully accessible units, it looks like you guys are conforming with like the NCB. Um, that was neither here nor there, but I do like the design, and I just anything that could break up the kind of Eve's facade, or um, maybe a color that's not just pure white. Um, Anything back here would be appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, I think doing the EFIS, we selected it because it's kind of the middle ground between uh, brick and vinyl, which obviously we don't want to do that. And EFIS becomes less expensive the more you do. So, we've got a ton of brick on the front. We kind of need to kind of play with that relationship. Um, so that's the reasoning that it's most or all that material in the back. In terms of color, we're flexible on that for sure. And then, going back to one of your earlier comments, Philip, I do like the idea of maybe just elevating, the red brick portion to the fourth floor. It might even, you know, uh, make the current setback of the fifth floor feel okay. So I'd maybe use that as an option 3, where option 1 is the current design. Option 2 would be Alex's suggestion of bringing up the third floor to be 4 floors tall, and then push that back. So we'll do a couple different things, and then as Chris mentioned, we can basically just have alternating renderings back and forth for a select few of those, so we can kind of see the progress as we go through this process.
Thank you for being willing to work with us on
Sure.
that. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, I think we've heard from everyone here so far. I guess I didn't mention anything about the ethos, but I like that, in terms of it being a more modest material, but I don't mind the monolithic appearance of that on the back. It's sort of like we would have on a lot of more simple rear elevations on retail or warehouse buildings in the area. So I'm not averse to that at all.
Okay, I'm going to use that, Doug. I'll use that comment. I like that.
Okay. Well, if no one else has any other comments to chime in with, then you feel like you, Wes, that you've gotten some good feedback here today?
I have, yeah, and I look forward to, making some of the revisions, and then we'll talk probably later this month or next month.
Great. I guess one other thing I would add about the setbacks on the front of the building, I actually kind of like that the way the 3-story massing lines up better with the existing storefronts, and to pull the 4 and 5 back as he's done. That's my initial impression. So I guess we're not all unanimous.
Great. Well, we'll look at it, and I prefer the scheme we have, but we'll take a look and figure it out.
Yeah, I'll just add too that I agree with Doug on that. I don't necessarily completely dislike or disagree with how the massing is set up today. I guess I'm wondering maybe the coloration or the materiality of that as it steps back. Maybe thinking about if it becomes not brick, maybe it becomes metal panel or something to maybe further differentiate. And if it's maybe darker, maybe it sort of recedes back further. So I'm on the same page with Doug, but I do appreciate the other comments from the other committee members.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess that concludes our agenda, does it not, Dan?
I'm sorry to
Yes,
interrupt.
yes. Oh.
Is there a formal vote for conceptual or no?
No vote on conceptual, just comments and feedback. And if you'd like, we can circle back later, or I can just kind of scan and send you what notes I took, if that's helpful.
Yeah, great.
But yeah, you're good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Wes.
Bye.
So yeah, Doug, as you're saying, that is our last agenda item for the day. So.
All right. Well, I guess that calls for adjournment of this meeting of the Ohio City Design Review Committee.
All right. Thank you all.
Dan, can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
We had talked about a couple times previously the lack of screening at Church and State over the multi-story parking garages. It's been absent for a couple years now. Is there anything more to report on that?
I don't have anything right now, but I will, I'll look into that and try and see if I can come up with something this afternoon, or at least get some traction on it. And hopefully have something to update you guys with.
Great, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have one other little peeve I'd like to bring up to see if Dan or any other, you've heard any remarks from neighbors, is the homeowner at 45th and John, who has these huge banners and signs up on the corner of their lawn. That's got to be a violation of zoning somewhere without knowing what it is. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? The sort of religious political banners that are up on the corner of their property. They've got one tied to a chain link fence, and the other one's mounted with posts just behind the fence.
That's 45th and John, you said?
Yeah.
Or 44th, 45th?
45th.
Okay. I'll yeah, we can take a look at it and ask Building and Housing to go out and see if it's I'm pretty sure there are zoning rules about signage in residential areas. I don't know exactly what they are, but
yeah, I might also
there are
add,
definitely rules.
Dan, yeah,
Yes.
I might also add, Dan, the property that the church that's on the corner of 45th and Bridge also has a lot of things that are sort of in that area.
Yeah.
Signage attached to the building, large statues that are in crates adjacent to the building. I know that the councilman has been notified of all of this and is aware, but just I'm not sure if there's if there are other things that are in motion or need to be in motion.
Great.
Um,
Thanks, Chris.
yeah, I appreciate that. I'll look into all those and, yeah, people need to be coming before us for, certificates of appropriateness if they want to have statues or signage or whatever. Then we can hear
Okay.
them out, but more agenda items, right?
Yeah. All right.
Right.
Thank-
All right. Thank you,
thanks,
guys.
everyone. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.